to the Weekly Bioanalysis, a KCAS Bio podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Weekly Bioanalysis episode 100. Like number 50, we're doing it in person and on camera, and as we mentioned, our introduction for every episode has been the same. This one we're doing slightly differently, but it is the Weekly Bioanalysis is a podcast by KCAS Bio. We're a contract lab in Olathe, Kansas, and we support the pharmaceutical industry and have done for around 40 years. We started this podcast because COVID shuts us down. We couldn't visit our customers, so we settled on this structure fairly quickly, and it's a chance for us to reach out and just talk about the pharmaceutical industry and what we do. I'm John Perkins. I've been doing bioanalytical LC-MS for around 30 years. 6 of those have been at KCAS Bio, and I'm here with Dominic, Warrino, my co-host.
Yeah. Hi, Dominic Warrino. Been in the ligand binding assay and biomarker space for close to 30 years. Very excited to be recording live today, our 100th podcast here in good old Olathe, Kansas City area. But we are a global company, locations in Philadelphia and Lyon as well. But we're very excited. Normally we would be just no video, but we're, for those of you that haven't joined the podcast before, we're going to go over some news and notes. We're going to go into our main agenda, which is going to be reflecting upon 20 years of doing the podcast. 6 years of doing the podcast. And and then we'll get some hot seat questions. And and if you're not familiar with the podcast, it can be found virtually anywhere. You can download podcasts. Now that we're, again, creeping up on number 100, you can find it on Google, Apple, YouTube. Wherever you may find your podcast, you can find us. And so, John, I don't know if you have anything to add to our intro, but otherwise we'll just jump right in.
Exactly. Let's get going.
John, as usual, let's just kick it off with the news and notes.
Okay. First up is talking about what really is a drug that's dealing with what we thought was a previously non-druggable target in pancreatic cancer, and it's talking about RAS drugs. It's the AACR meeting, the American Association for Cancer Research. It was data presented by Revolution Medicine. They previously reported that they got some good results for patients with metastatic disease, but this is showing more data on the survivability of daraxonrasib, which is something I've been practicing all morning to pronounce. And it's talking about their drug alone in combination with other drugs. And the excitement about this is it's not, like I say, this is sort of advertising for Revolution Medicine here, but it's really, we're moving into a realm where there are actually drugs on the market for this indication, but there's the risk of resistance, etc. But the approach of this daraxonrasib is to inhibit the RAS protein. And this RAS protein is vital for the survival of several cancers, and like we mentioned at the beginning, pancreatic cancer. And it does this by acting as a glue that sticks RAS to another protein, cyclophilin A, shuts off the RAS's ability to drive cell growth and division, and effectively shut it down. And this is huge. So
it is. No, pancreatic cancer is a real tough therapy. Tough cancer to treat. I think there's only 1 or 2 drugs on the market, so this is really wonderful for anybody with pancreatic cancer. Yeah, John, pancreatic cancer is real tough cancer to treat. There's not too many drugs on the market available for it. This is a wonderful breakthrough for anybody with that type of disorder. The AACR meetings are great, so this is wonderful news out of there. Glues, these glues are kind of cool. They're really new things. I like the way this mechanism of action works. It binds to cyclophilin A, the drug itself does, and then it inactivates the enzyme. Really a wonderful story about a really hard therapy to treat. And then like this non-druggable, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, because that's something that you hear a lot about. It's not a druggable candidate, right? That's the language that's often used, and this sort of comes around it. You alluded to it earlier, where a lot of people become resistant to it. And this allows to sort of help prevent that. And then I don't know if you want to touch a little bit more about some of the future iterations of the drug, but I'll kind of throw it back at you.
I think they've got a lot in the pipeline, because this has been a lot of Revolution Medicine's focus is the RAS approach. So they've got daraxonrasib. It works against multiple different mutations. They have others, zoldonrasib, which is one particular mutation it goes after. And they've also got other ones coming through. They've got a catalytic RAS inhibitor known as RM055, and it's using different mechanisms. So it's all going at RAS, but using different mechanisms to deal with it. So hopefully you've then got these different approaches that will be helpful for patients in the long run.
Yeah.
So the RM055 flips activated RAS into an inactivated state. So that's the daraxonrasib acts as the glue to bind it to a protein, shut it down. The RM055 is a different mechanism, and it's talking about, let's see, there's one of the experts talking about tumors are being clever because they can adapt. When the RAS they depend on is gummed up, they can adapt by simply churning out more and more of the protein to overcome the inhibitory effects. So this RM055 does what the drugs that are further in development can do, but by flipping the RAS into an inactive state, then it's countering that ability of the tumor to increase the production of protein. So it's just fascinating. Again, we talk about this all the time, the progress we're seeing in medical research. And in the course of, the 6 years we've been doing this, ended up talking about drugs that 6 years ago we would never even have been considering.
This glue concept didn't even exist. The way they talk about the tumors being clever, that's a tumor microenvironment. The tumor does a whole series of things to help prevent itself to live, and RAS plays a key source of, I believe it's a source of nutrition or some form of proliferation, I think it helps causes hyperproliferation. You cut that, this drug itself through this mechanism stops that RAS production, inactivates the enzyme, and therefore kind of helps kill the cancer. What's interesting about this is a couple more disease states they're looking at. I believe it was colorectal cancer and lung. Is that right?
Cancer, yeah.
So really those solid tumors, as they kind of called, are really difficult diseases to treat because of that tumor microenvironment. You really got to get directly into the site of where the tumor is. So a couple other stories out of AACR, which is always a good meeting. I think there's a couple other companies that are looking into this: Class Therapeutics, Veristem, and Blossom Hill Therapeutics. So I think these glues, and I believe we're working on one company. I believe we do have one of the therapies we're working on for validation of a method for a glue type drug. But I don't. You have anything else to add other than it really is a wonderful, like you said, over the last 6 years. When we started this podcast, you would have never heard about a glue type drug.
I think what we'll see is, this is really the first time talking about this, but we have touched on solid tumors before.
Sure.
What we'll see is more and more of these kind of articles coming through where we're getting more success with tumors that we really weren't getting close to touching before.
Yeah.
So that's why we touched on this. So let's move on to the next thing. This is actually digging back into the past, another favored theme. How a 20-year-old asthma drug is boosting food allergy research. I think any of us with kids are always aware of, the effect of foods on, we seem to see increasing food allergies, etc. My daughter isn't so much foods, but a lot of different substances. So it's like metals. She can't wear synthetic fibers, and it's something that really accelerated once she had COVID, and so she's been dealing with that. So the thought that there's drugs that might eventually help with that is great. But this is actually interesting because it's not just we will touch on it later, but there's a drug that was approved for peanut allergy a year or two ago. The company was bought by Nestle, but it never really went anywhere. It's almost like we're cycling back through. We've had we've had obesity where it's become a huge multi-billion-dollar market. And food allergies are out there, but it's actually Xolair, which is a 23-year-old asthma medication, may actually be the trigger to kick off what could be another multi-billion-dollar market. So basically, Xolair is approved for asthma, and then it was its approval was expanded into food allergies, and currently it's a $4 billion a year drug. From there are a lot of other companies are now starting to move back into this area and see, well, where can we go with this? And so it could be quite exciting to watch where this goes. So.
Yeah, no, Xolair is near and dear to my heart. It's an older drug. I think it's coming off patent, but it basically mops up IgE. And
sure.
The story is wonderful. I'm very fortunate to have been able to work on some of the methods for not only PK, but also ADA. It was tricky. The IgE space is a little bit complex. The reason why the delay from going from treating from treating asthma to allergy, in the story, the article notes that is, pediatric trials are somewhat of a no-no because causing some sort of, allergic response. IgEs are really anaphylactic type things. And so they really scare the physician, scare the family. So this drug really had not ever gone anywhere other than inside of the allergy space. And moving into food is, it was in the asthma space, and moving into the food allergies is wonderful. And actually, I met Dr. Wood. I know him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's referenced in here. He's out of Johns Hopkins, right?
Sure. Oh yeah.
And so he was a big allergy and immunology physician, and really wanted to push this drug. And he's actually the one that got it into the pediatric setting, right? Okay. So I'll maybe you can chime back in.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about some of the numbers. In 2024, the CDC estimated about 18 million adults and 4 million children reported an allergy to at least one food. So it tells you the scope of the market there. And to talk about that, the unwillingness to test, and this is somewhat is the FDA was at the root of it, where basically it is the reluctance to expose children to severe allergic reactions, because some of these drugs are, modified forms of the allergen that you're administering to try and build up a resistance. So there's this caution about doing that, so the drugs never went anywhere. Because that's why this article touches on Xolair was approved 23 years ago, but it's only really now it's cycling back, because I think it was partly it was the drug that I alluded to earlier from AI Immune, where that moved to approval. So it put a bit more attention on this, and then how can we a bit more, it's not more just attention, but acceptance. And so it's the acceptance to try these drugs to get, because it's an unmet need. I mean, it's like I don't no longer get peanuts on flights because there's that concern if someone on the flight has a peanut allergy, you don't want to set off.
Whole sections of stadiums don't serve peanuts now.
I miss my peanuts, to be quite honest. I'm not a big pretzel fan, so the peanuts were a big deal, or loss of peanuts was a big deal. Like you say, it was IgEs, and so it's I think this again is another one to watch into what we'll see coming through.
So it's really a cool way that this works, because most of your IgEs are, you need them. They fight parasites. They activate your basophils. They really help the body a lot. A big part of the innate immune system. But in this case, this actually looks for free IgE. So that's a key component of how this drug works, is that it doesn't bind to the IgEs that are in there kind of acting naturally, because IgEs turn over pretty quickly. And so the whole concept of binding it up in non-complex form inactivates, and thereby you're tolerating the actual peanuts and so forth, because it's not that it's specific to any specific allergy. It actually could, or it could really be very beneficial for not just peanuts, but it seems like it might have benefit for anybody with allergies. And if you've listened to this podcast in the past, as I've gotten older, I'm starting to develop some allergies. So I actually, even not that they're severe enough to want to take a biologic like Xolair, but I'm still relatively young, and who knows, but I think it's a wonderful sort of biologic that could be very useful for anybody that has, adult onset allergies, but certainly back to the article itself, as you mentioned, there's like 4 million, adolescents that might be, needing something like this. Could really help with the quality of life.
Sure.
But then it's an interesting story around the biosimilar piece. I don't know if you want to drill on that.
Go ahead.
Meaning,
You feel
because it's been on the market for so long that, there are biosimilars coming out from a number of companies, and I know they cite them on here. But what I find most interesting is there's a little note that says, hey, it might not be that big of a cost savings, is what I find kind of funny because of some of the regulations around it, as well as now if and I'm not a biosimilar expert, but what they're saying is you have to demonstrate more efficacy than the actual innovator drug, is what they note there. So that might be a tall task for any sort of biosimilar. But it's always nice to read an article that puts me back to, this is something I worked on before I even joined KCAS Bio. So it was near and dear to me, and really complex assays. Like I've always kind of preached, any sort of drug that has a lot of efficacy tends to be a bioanalytical nightmare. Yeah. And it was really hard to determine if there was any free IgE. As I kind of mentioned, it was actually part of the way we looked for it was with a cell-based assay. We used some basophils to kind of determine if you had truly inactivated all the IgE. So cool story there. Even got to look at some anti-IgE antibodies, which could be very dangerous.
Okay.
Well.
Oh, really? How?
Well, because like if you start complexing those IgEs, they can really cause anaphylaxis. Getting back to why this has taken 20 years before any pediatrician was willing to take this on.
Sure.
And so kind of gets into the same space as trying to create vaccines for pregnant women as well, because there are some vaccines that are readily available, present any sort of granzyme B stillbirths, but who wants to take the risk of vaccinating pregnant women? But it's a great story, and it's near and dear to my heart, and good luck to all those.
What are your triggers?
What do you mean my triggers?
Your upcoming you say your notes and allergies, what sets you off?
Oh,
my dad used to be convinced he was allergic to green peppers and nutmeg.
So,
which we weren't sure we were quite.
It's funny. There's one that really troubles me. It might be alcohol. So every once in a while, if I have a beer or two, especially beer, if I drink a beer, my nose gets real stuffy. Yeah. The vodkas and whiskeys, I'm okay, but a beer can make my nose stuffy.
My mum was allergic to alcohol.
Yeah.
And then her elder brother developed an allergy to alcohol later in life as well.
And I think it's even like sometimes when I'm out on the golf course, if I walk through the wrong patch of grass, that'll cause it as well. So it's kind of universal. Certainly dust, but it's something that I'm not sure how to combat it other than taking some sort of Zyrtec in the morning really helps a lot.
So so I'm seasonal. I'm a Montelukast person. After Claritin and Zyrtec, I couldn't have any effect. So this time of the year is my Montelukast time. Then it all wears off. But there's certain pollens that I'm allergic to that for a number of people will set off allergies when you eat particular fruits that have similar proteins. It's all called oral allergy syndrome.
Yeah.
If I eat a cherry,
you go
inside my nose and ears and everything. It's
No, I don't have any.
It's not severe enough to merit any medication, but it's
Yeah, mine's nose gets a little stuffy sometimes on alcohol, and then it'll run it seems like I have like a dual thing, some seasonal allergies, and like if I'm indoors too much, dust might cause it. But anyhow, it is, it's not easy getting old, I can tell you.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
We've had enough of our tangent.
Yeah, no, this next one's always right up my alley.
So we're back to really allergies, but a different kind of allergy almost. So one woman, 3 autoimmune diseases. CAR T therapy vanquishes ultra rare disease trio. This is amazing because obviously we talk about CAR Ts and their administration for oncology, and there is active research looking at CAR Ts for autoimmune diseases. But this was a woman in Germany who had 3 autoimmune diseases, and so the only way that they could find to give her quality of life, or a researcher going out on a limb by himself, trying a CAR T approach to see if that would have an effect. And effectively, it's eliminated her disease at present. She hasn't been
almost
back.
2 years or something, right?
Yeah, so I'll just read a little bit of the introduction here. A woman with an ultra-rare combination of 3 autoimmune diseases has had no symptoms since receiving a single dose of engineered immune cells, doctors in Germany's report. She had previously received 9 other types of treatment without getting better, could no longer work, was sometimes bedridden with for weeks with pain and fatigue. So it's like she had, it was her B cells with the issue. They were making antibodies that attacked her own red blood cells, causing the disease autoimmune hemolytic anemia. They also attacked her platelets, causing immune thrombocytopenia, and some fat binding proteins causing antiphospholipid symptoms. So so they basically, when she had their blood transfusions, at least on an average once a day, or sometimes 3 bags a day. I mean, we're talking a really poor quality of life. And so it was, let me see if I can find, it was, I can't find
Hospital Erlangen, is that?
Yeah, here we go. It's Fabian Müller, a hematologist at University Hospital Erlangen in Germany, who helped to treat her and co-authored the report on this. So I'll pass it to you.
No, so as John mentioned, she had 3 diseases. I mean, all sorts of 9 therapies, blood transfusions daily. Give her this just shot of CAR T, and suddenly she's living kind of medication free. And a lot of people that they kind of refer to it, you got to take 2 handfuls of pills to when you have these sorts of disorders. And so maybe a small step back, if you're not familiar with CAR T cells, those are, in this case, it's an autologous therapy. They kind of take your cells out of your body. They engineer them against a specific CAR T cell receptor. They do that typically through some sort of viral vector of some sort. They don't go into great detail about how they do the therapy here, but as John mentioned, it goes after B cells, and so through this mechanism of either, I believe they're depleting the B cells and thereby preventing any antibodies from binding to it, and therefore allows her to live kind of a normal life.
What it says here, they harvested the women's T cells and engineered them to attack a protein found only on B cells.
Yeah, so it could be, they don't really divulge that.
Exactly.
But I'm sure we've talked about the local Kansas University Medical Center. It's all public knowledge. They have a CAR T cell therapy that's actually targeting 3 B cell receptors. It's like 19, CD19, CD20, and I think CD21. I'm guessing, I don't know if that's what they do here. It might be something different because that's treating leukemia and lymphoma, but although it could be somewhat similar. I would imagine one of the, but it still seems to be, I mean, what a great story. You go from almost bedridden, needing tons of therapeutics, your quality of life is completely diminished, and then along comes this one-shot deal, and they do reference Carl June, who's the actual, like, kind of the godfather and like an idol of mine for CAR T cells, and he talks about this woman shouldn't even be alive without this, right? So it's really I mean, I don't know, maybe you can, if you want to jump in here, but the traditional autologous CAR T, this is a great story, but I do think the field is moving towards those in vivo ones.
Sure.
Yeah, but this is a great, just because of the cost, and if our audience isn't familiar with in vivo, instead of using one's cells and manipulating the ex vivo the body, they're injecting the individuals with the virus themselves or the vector itself, and allowing the host machinery to do it, which might take a $2 million therapy down to maybe a $10,000 vaccine, right? So, or even less. So really fabulous story there. But maybe back to this article, I don't know. I'm still somewhat shocked that in our lifetime, if you're new to the podcast, I worked on autologous T cells back in the 90s. We didn't really know what we were doing. Fast forward to today,
Here we go.
35 years later, 30 years later, and man, this individual, I know it's like an N of 1, but certainly holds the future of like ways to treat like just things we thought were almost untreatable.
Sure.
Even learning about allergies and when I got my immunology degree, learning about allergies and asthma and stuff like that, I always thought it was like an area where, hey, that might not be something. I'd stay away from that as a therapeutic. And fast forward to today, and it is definitely something that is really treatable now with these types of therapeutics.
And when, just to go back to Carl June, the last thing that it attributes to him, he says there's about 200 clinical trials currently looking at CAR T for autoimmune conditions. So again, it's another space we're likely to hear a lot.
Yeah, no, we do a lot of it. They're fascinating therapies, really complex, and they have complex assays. Several assays are needed to treat it. John, I know we have one more, but maybe for time's sake, you want to skip that one?
We'll do it quickly.
Okay, let's do it.
A chance to expand on what's happening here in June.
Go ahead.
So this is very quick. It's basically Halion scores branding goal with star-studded soccer offensive. Halion, who I think spun out from GSK,
Yeah.
sell a lot of the household medications that we use, sort of like Sensodyne toothpaste and Advil. And as I looked at the promo photo for this, but this is actually using Tyler Adams, who plays for Bournemouth in England, at the centre of an ad campaign about the support its products provide, and they're tying us in with the World Cup.
Yeah.
That's why I'm talking about this, because obviously got the World Cup coming in a month's time, and this is Kansas City is obviously one of the hotbeds where things are happening. I just thought I'd give you a chance to expand.
It's always good to see. Yeah, it's always nice to see U.S. players in the Premier League. You don't see enough of them, but Tyler Adams is quite a good player. And, here in Kansas City, the World Cup is just dominating the news. It's been on a countdown. I think we're almost under 30 days until the official kickoff. I'm sure when you got off the airport, all you saw was World Cup.
There's a fair bit of it.
It's kind of everywhere. Yeah. And I think I'm going to make at least a game or two. I'm pretty excited about it. Won't go to the Argentinian game though, although Messi will be in town here. But you can feel the electricity in the city here with this. And hats off to Helion for supporting the World Cup, and we're pretty excited about it here in Kansas City. Yeah. So John, excited to be doing our 100th podcast. Why don't you kick us off with the main portion today?
Sure. So as we've said already, it's 100 podcasts down, which has been 6 years in the making. And so we thought it would be nice to talk about where we were in 2020, 2020, the reason for the podcast, and just what's happened at KCAS over the last 6 years, because it's been an exciting time to be part of the company. Today we're joined by two very special guests, John Bucksath, the CEO, and Amy Mize, the Chief Commercial Officer at KCAS Bio. 2020 at KCAS, I'd been with the company around 5 months as part of the scientific advisor team. It was a case of I was out on the road a lot with the business development directors, and we then started hearing in the media about the emergence of COVID. And I was actually in North Carolina as things started to close down. We're down Research Triangle, and the first inkling we had really of it affecting us was three of us were driving to visit a customer in RTP, and we got this phone call to say, have any of you travelled abroad in the last couple of weeks? Would you mind if we took our temperatures when you arrive? And we're like, no, we haven't been out. We take our temperatures, etc. And so we did the meeting, and then that was the first inkling. Then the following week for me, I was actually back in Kansas City, and I'd intended to stay to the Thursday of the week. By the Tuesday of the week, it was obvious that local businesses were closing. So as someone who was traveling, there were no restaurants for me to eat at because I could only get takeout food. And then I said, right, I brought my trip forward home to Wednesday, flew through Philadelphia airport as a ghost town. And I was like, we could see things slowly shutting down. Actually, I jumped ahead a bit because I really want to talk about where KCAS were in 2020. That was my experience of the transition and what COVID caused. But at the time, we were in a different building. It was exciting to join in 2019 because it coincided roughly with the introduction of new business lines. There was dose formulation, there was the hybrid LCMS, there was the discovery team. There was a lot happening in terms of new science kicking off, and you could see it was a company that knew where it wanted to go. And then COVID obviously sort of kind of put a sort of stop in that, but you have to pivot and deal with that. So I'll pass it to you.
Well, that's why
that's my perspective.
When they proposed this idea of doing the podcast, that's what drove it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were unable to travel, and so the whole concept of this podcast, I was like, who in their right mind would want to listen to us? However, it has been flattering to be here for 100 episodes, and as John alluded to, when we started in 2020, it was we had just started launching our discovery services, our dose formulation, and our hybrid services. And maybe as the two of you were kind of, I don't know, really involved with that, I don't know if you want to comment on where we were back in 2020 and just the evolution of that and how it kind of really drove us into the building we're in today. I don't know, maybe any thoughts and comments around how when we started launching dose form, discovery, and hybrid, were you scared at all? Were you worried about it? Was there anything that you thought were troubling, or were these just? And John, we've been working together 10 years now, right? And so if we even want to go a step back further, we can really reflect and think, man, how did we even do it back then to get to where we are today? But launching those things, I mean, I know there was for me, it was like, I knew the hybrid piece was going to take off because that was where protein mass spec and biologics was going. But I didn't know that much about, we had done some discovery, but I'd say we weren't really that great at it because we were just so rigid and we wanted everything to be perfect. And discovery wants it rough and ready. And then dose form was somewhat new to me, but those were service lines that I don't know if there was trepidation because of COVID, but it didn't slow them down. And it really, those things really took off kind of out of the gate. And I don't know, those were some of the things that allowed us to go into the new investments, but we have the ability to go anywhere we want with this. But I don't know if you want to talk about those service lines and how it led to certain things, or even just the vision of the building we're in today, which I'm sure was a big part of what we were working on during COVID.
Well, absolutely. Just jumping in, adding new service lines. The company was really starting to make some traction along the way, and we've done a great job of putting the business cases together, securing the investments, bringing in the equipment, and most importantly, bringing in the talent. And then from there, all of a sudden, this huge unknown shows up in the form of COVID. And laying awake many nights wondering, hey, is this going to be a huge downturn in the industry? What are we going to do? How are we going to keep our people safe? How are we going to keep people motivated? Are they literally going to shut down the business? So there was just so many things going on. I remember making just phone call after phone call to anybody who could get some information. I think for me, the biggest challenge was at the time is who's on first, what's on second in this situation, who really has the answers and who doesn't. From there, the one thing that was clear, we had to write and be prepared for a plan. I remember starting that plan, coming back from San Francisco on a plane, after visiting some customers and noticing, at that time, this was February, the big question was, hey, this new virus, it's happening in China, oh my goodness, is it going to make it to the US? It didn't take me long to figure out that it was already here, which, come on, we're all in the business, we knew it was here. It's just a matter of it, when was going to be the scenario. So getting back, writing our plan, putting that together, just constantly wondering, is this going to be a huge impact to the organization? And of course, I was thinking negatively, but now I think we've all looked back and say, wow, it was one of the most disrupting aspects in our industry, from the aspect that it really brought the industry to life into the public's eyes and what the industry could do. And, the public tends to have a negative view of large pharma and the biotech industries, and I think this was one chance to really see it go to work and produce life-saving products, and in a record amount of time. That in our teams, we were an exempt organization, so we were allowed to continue in operations. And I think once everybody kind of stopped, looked around and said, hey, how are we still going to continue the business, and wondering if there was going to be any business, it didn't take long to figure out that, hey, maybe something's happening here, and maybe I'll turn it over to Amy and maybe she can talk about that portion of where it went. And, sometimes I look at her, scratch my head and say, are you sure this is what's happening? So.
Yeah. When I think back to that time, I think the things that are most memorable is how the team that was outwardly facing, visiting customers all the time, really had to regroup and find a different way to reach people. I think before those days, we didn't have Zoom and Teams meetings all day long. And today that is one evolution that has changed quite a bit that we've kept since the days of COVID. But I also remember just watching the laboratory, people still come to work, and how we had to adapt around that. So the podcast was one evolution of that, as you mentioned, and finding new ways to reach our customers, to meet with people, to keep the word of KCAS Bio still going, and all of those things. And I also remember reflecting on unique times that the company was really in a place, and I was really impressed what we did for people. So what we did for our own employees during that time, and some of the dinners that we brought in on Fridays for people to then take home to their families so that they would have food, and all the things that our people operations team really did to recognize the employees during that time. So I remember it was a difficult time, but also just being very proud to be part of an organization that was able to adapt and accommodate. and really push forward and succeed through a really difficult time. And we've certainly come a long way with a lot of great people and a lot of new service offerings and new science and new technology that has come on board, but it certainly was a good time to reflect on and just see how far we've come.
Dominic, let me inspired me. You asked a question I'd answer. You said, well, maybe how it impacted this building. At this point in time, it reaffirmed we definitely needed to expand.
I was thinking about that decision we had.
Yes.
There was
Distancing.
the minimum distance
Yeah.
ruling, and then well, it was already a cramped facility to then say on top of that now people can't be within X feet of each other.
Yeah.
And I remember the satellite buildings, etc., to ensure that you could keep people apart.
Yeah, necessity was the mother of all of innovation, right? And so we made it work. We stuck by the rules, and the teams, and especially in the labs, did amazing jobs. But they were willing to work extra hours to help, volunteer to get in and really develop those plans. And we'd set the direction, and the teams just come up with ways to get things done and still, deliver the data, the quality of data on time. It was just really, really inspiring to see.
Yeah, you stayed ahead of the curve because a lot of clients were asking us how we were doing it. They had a lot of concerns because, as you kind of mentioned, what was going to happen? Was it going to be fearful? Or what we suddenly realized was with everybody else's lab shut down, people were really ringing our doorbell quite a bit for work. And so I do remember early on, a lot of people wanted protocols, and we always seemed to be slightly ahead of everybody. We were taking temperatures. We were doing a lot of things before it was like, I guess, the normal process during COVID. So just for the sake of time, I know, I think maybe you want to take a second about trying to build a new building during COVID. Do you want to talk about that at all? I think that should be an achievement that we can maybe cut on real fast, and how we manage that.
Well, from our previous facility to really go where the vision was taking us, I knew we were going to have a facility that could keep up with the talent that we had. Bringing on and investing in our commercial, investing in our operational talent in a growing market. It was inevitable that my job is to stay out in front of the team and make sure you have the tools of the trade, and that represented the quality and capabilities and competence that the organization had. So in 2020, literally the plans for the building were made, the financing was in, and that was just yet another, haymaker, if you will, coming around with COVID. Is this going to derail all of this? But once, as Amy was saying, once we really started moving forward and seeing the demand and watching things, it was pick a path, and the path for me was, hey, we need to go at this, 200%. So, what does that look like? Yes, we were sitting in, social distancing rooms and things, still negotiating with the banks and buying the land and going faster. And everybody said, even our investors at the time said, you're crazy if you think you can build a building when all these supply chains and so on and so forth. And I said, look, I've built many buildings, and I've got a pretty good idea how this works. And, some risk, but I think the bigger risk was waiting. And, sometimes you have to take a little bit of risk. We did it. It worked out well, on time, on budget. We're sitting here today. Yeah. And so look back, it was a good decision.
Well,
And
really
the
happy.
the supply chain thing was very real, because I remember just domestically, we lost our oven broke, and it took us, I think, 8 months to replace it. First of all, we couldn't get it, and then when we could get it, we couldn't get electric inspector to come in, and we couldn't get people to install it. So, and it wasn't just us; that was just the one instance that we were aware of. But you sort of forget how delayed things were in terms of just making things happen.
Absolutely. One of the things I asked from our investors, I had the authority to sign off on buying materials.
Okay, sure.
Because sometimes it was literally on the phone all day long trying to find the appropriate steel. And if I found it, if I didn't buy it within the second I had it, somebody else was in line. And so I think I spent more time and learned more about steel over about a month and a half period. But we literally secured an order coming from China at the time, which was where the issues were, right? Supply and demand issue. But that was the linchpin. Once we had that, then we knew we had we make concrete here and all those type of things. But once we had the infrastructure, I knew we had to get minimally the building to a certain point. And if we had the steel and the concrete and aspects, it could be delayed a bit, but no, it ended up being a good decision. We really took off from there. As we all know, the market started investing heavier, and outsourcing just went through the roof later in 2020 and 21, which was, the time it couldn't be any better at that point in time, because we simply could not have kept up doing what we were doing at our own facility.
Yeah, we were busting out of the seam from there. Yeah.
And when you say outsourcing going out the roof, I personally can't remember, how did that affect the commercial team? Because we couldn't go and see people. It was all reliant on Teams, or what were the team doing different? Or was it just there was so much work?
Yeah, I think what I remember in the very beginning, there wasn't so much work. We really had to go after it. So we had to be really aggressive and change our process and change how we work to meet people and reach people. So obviously a lot of virtual meeting and a lot of things of that nature. But in the beginning, it wasn't easy, and it got a little easier, but we had to adapt. And I think every month we were looking at what worked, what didn't work, changing marketing strategies, changing outreach. And
doing a podcast.
Well, I want to touch on that because the podcast, obviously, we're here at number 100. I'm so glad that the 2-Minute Tuesdays died out. That was that was an idea, but I mean, yes, it was basically, for people who have never seen one, don't go looking. It was us doing a 2-minute presentation on a subject of our choosing, and basically doing it in our office.
Yeah.
And I had a very jury-rigged sort of approach for recording myself on my phone, and then taking it from there. But yes, I'm glad that one went away, because the podcast obviously has been a much better way of getting our name out there.
Amy, I want to drill in a little bit more. You said we did some things. One was the podcast, and I think the name of the first podcast is "What in the World Just Happened." Is there? So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but how did we kind of? Because I was there with you a little bit, but in general, what were some of the other things we were kind of trying now that we were kind of handcuffed to our basement?
I remember the first thing we did is really listen. So we sent all of the team out asking clients, what does this mean to you? What are you doing? How are you still getting work done? What is changing in your environment? And we didn't hear the same thing from all parts of geographies. There were some different ways the East Coast was handling things from the West Coast. So we listened and then adapted in the different geographies to ways to reach people and try to work that out. So I just remember we did a lot of listening and asking questions, and then adapting to what we heard and how we thought we could reach people easier.
I think I can even remember a request for a van that could handle controlled samples.
Yeah.
And we were literally speccing that. And about that time, it seemed like FedEx and UPS started coming back online. And so we were just about that far away from pulling
that.
Was
one of the hardest
come to you.
Clients didn't know how they were going to get samples from point A to point B, because shipping wasn't the same at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah, and we saw a lot of clients go completely virtual. Is that what then helped us pick up opportunities? Because obviously if their business couldn't stall.
Yeah, I think the challenge actually was, though, because clients couldn't get into their facilities, if we needed a reagent or a material, we couldn't get those materials and reagents. So we were trying to be creative just to get the laboratory to still get what they needed to be able to do if it wasn't a commercially available item. Sometimes that was the hardest thing. I remember trying to get things from clients that weren't going into their buildings and couldn't get things out of their freezer to ship to us. So
it took like 2 weeks for them to get permission to go into the building and all that. Oh, wow. I kind of forgot all that. So nice walk down memory lane here. I think it's important to kind of transition into some of the investments that we made in the expansion of our brand. I don't know, John, I don't know if you want to recall maybe the first mergers and acquisitions and so forth. Any thoughts on how all that, I know we're kind of coming out of COVID, but I feel like, I can't recall. I think COVID was kind of over before we made the first acquisition. Is that accurate, or was it still at the tail end?
Well, we made our first acquisition, actually closed on that acquisition in February of 2022. So COVID was still there. I think everybody, kind of got their arms and minds around how to deal with it, and realized we were going to have to deal with it. And by that point in time, either people had access to the vaccination or Mother Nature was vaccinating people. And I think we realized that this was one of the things we could help manage a bit, but we didn't have control.
Yeah.
And so, life had to continue to move on. So with that, 2022 was quite an interesting year. Delivered this building, built another building up in Philadelphia, made the acquisition of a group called Flowmetric in the spring of that year, I guess late winter. And then also looking into Europe, we also made an acquisition of a group called Active Biomarkers. And all of a sudden we went from, a site in Kansas to all of a sudden having, geographic and technical reach and capabilities that really just kind of propelled us into a different scenario very, very quickly. With that said, at that point in time too, is one of the most aggressive years in financing between 21. And so just a lot of demand. So the timing that we were doing things was great. And, it really challenged the organization to step up and lead. And then lead other groups that we had acquired, and that we learned a lot during that time. I think every organization does, and but no, it was a lot of fun and a lot of challenging, a lot of late nights. But that's just par for the course when you've got a team that's motivated and excited and really believed in the brand and where we were headed. It was a great time, and we've done nothing but continue to build on that ever since.
So like in maybe an 18-month period, we went from a 30,000 square foot facility with one location to 70,000 square feet in one location, 26,000, and then another 18,000. To think about it, it's something to be. I can't believe I was part of it.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. But John, you kind of touched on something interesting about unifying a commercial team. So I'm going to turn to Amy. I don't know if I think it's a good segue to talk about how I feel like we harmonized real fast. I was happy to be part of some of the technical harmonization. I thought that was really important. Maybe in terms of trying to harmonize our business development side and commercial side. Maybe share your thoughts on how that.
Yeah, I think there's different ways you can do it, right? You can either integrate everything under one, or you can keep things kind of running on their own. And we chose to integrate and bring everything together, which upfront can take some challenge, but then once done, a lot of accomplishment and forward momentum. So it's really around making sure we all do things the same. Does the quote look the same that goes to the customer? Do we scope things the same? Do we think about it the same? And how do we position ourselves in the market? And what do we tell clients about our value proposition and why they should work with KCAS Bio? So really bringing all the strengths of the different sites that we brought on board together to understand what our collected strengths were and what we could do. And I think we were stronger together than we were apart. And certainly it wasn't an easy time, but we finally got everything done. And just as much work in systems too, with your CRM system, which for us is Salesforce, of course, and using those systems to get all the data in one place. So having everything in one location made a big step for the team to be able to collaborate better and understand what everyone was doing for the customers.
Yeah, I think there were two things. One, we really, the middleware, I don't know if you want to touch on that. I think that became a way for us to communicate amongst our sites. And then I was really happy to see us kind of unify with one email address. I thought that was part of the thing that really helped drive, because I've been through a few mergers and it always felt like you made someone feel off-putting if you had a different email address. But I think those were heavy investments that both of you did a lot of heavy lift for. But I think that really set us up for success. And I think I couldn't agree more that it was the right move to go all in on harmonizing us. And
Yeah, having been part of another purchase of particularly for Leon, another purchase of another European facility prior to coming to KCAS, and ultimately that lab, although they were part of they were part of the group, but they were ignored because company-wide meetings are always scheduled at a time that wouldn't suit them, and they were never really brought into the fold. So the way that you basically integrated Leon was really heartening to watch, actually, after what I'd been through in the Netherlands. So that was really good.
we never heard anybody feel like they weren't welcomed.
No.
It was exciting times. I don't know if any other last comments on that. Otherwise, we'll go to the next item. Yeah. So I think really one of the linchpins to our success is we've really gone into, we touched on our new service lines and new sites, but part of John and I as the scientific services team here, it's keeping up with new technologies and new drug modalities. So I think for us, we just come back and say, oh, hey, these ARCs, right? Anybody
totally.
silencing RNA conjugates are great, or oligos. And then
Yeah.
all John and maybe Amy saw was like, oh, what instrumentation do we need? And so I think over the last 6 years, I'm sure we could spend a whole podcast going over that. But maybe, I don't know if you want to go over some highlights of just, so I think we always came back with like, hey, these things, we need this. I feel like we've made, it's so blessed to be working here, because every time we came back with I don't want to call them harebrained ideas, but we built a business case, we did it as a team, and it really has driven us to be in the world leaders in any sort of conjugation technologies, oligo technologies, CAR T cell technologies. All that led to the expansion to PCR, hybrid mass spec. And I won't steal your thunder. I don't know if you want to make a comment on that, or even like talk about how it's kind of played out over the last, I know we're talking about 6 years, but I feel like we've really ramped up our technology platforms, just number of mass specs, service lines. It's something we're all very proud of. I don't know if there's a question in there for you.
At least from my seat on the bus here, you're always challenged as a CEO to figure out how you're going to differentiate. Within the bioanalytical realm, the industry always drives that. It's not a secret that, the pipeline was headed more towards biologics, although small molecules was still many of the products that were in the pipeline. It was an area that, looking at the talent we had, we were able to attract, and just the tenacity that the team had towards the science. At least my perspective was we had to lean into that. We could still do small molecules with the best of them, but that's really where the industry was going to go. And knowing that the biotech markets were going to continue to innovate, and large pharma was also somewhere along the way going to challenge that, develop that, start making that commercialization. The goal was to look downstream a few years and make sure that we were positioned for that. I spent many years in the labs. Today, I wouldn't be able to keep up by no stretch of the imagination, but it wasn't lost on me when I was in the lab that when new technologies come out and you feel like your competitors have them and you don't, you feel like you're behind, or you're not in a competitive position. So that's still in me, and that's one of the things I want the team, as long as we can justify how we're going to use that, to make sure that's where we landed. And it was great to see the company evolve to the point where we are very confident and very comfortable saying our tagline is "Science Accelerated" on all fronts, not just the science, but how do you accelerate? Because the best science in the world, but if you can't move it down the pipeline, or really innovate in the way you run the business as well, then you're really not accelerating much. So we really take that very seriously, and then with that, we've built our organization around that concept. So it's been a good run, and I think it's paying off well for us.
Took 10 years to become an overnight success, right?
It only took 10 years. The old adage, it takes 15 years. I guess we're ahead of the curve.
Amy, I don't know if you want to comment on any of just the wonderful growth and, whatever sort of business cases, and like, are we doing this type moments? Are we going to pull the trigger on this?
Yeah, I think it's another great reason that I love working at KCAS Bio, just to see the investment come online and to see it so fast. I think we're able to be flexible and nimble and do things pretty quickly, as fast as we were able to put Cytec Auroras for spectral flow across 3 continents, and then bring on a brand new technology, a new Liza at our Lyon facility. And then, of course, the high-res mass spec that we've brought on and expanded here at the Olathe facility. So just seeing how quickly we're able to do that to keep up with the demand and the changes in technology and science has been really heartening.
And even maybe one little quick note on the PCR side of things. I remember we needed to get that Maxwell system in. We had a new BD director, and they couldn't believe that he just asked for it, and within like 2 months it was here. And he's like, "Oh my goodness, you guys do, you say you do it, and then we go and do it, right?" And
it helps us as well when we're in calls and we know we don't have a technology, but we say to the client, "Well, give us an idea of what your need is for this," and then we can take that story back to the user's justification to introduce in the long term is great.
For your audience, I wanted to know that we take the business cases.
I was going to comment. You only see about 1 in 10, by the way.
I'm not saying we buy everything. It's like, but at least we know there's a definite path that if it makes sense.
Yeah, we do get asked a lot though, and not all of them make it to the.
No. Well, and I think one of the bigger things is everything that has been requested. We've been able to show the ROI and the demonstration. It either gets us into a new market, new clients, and at the ultimate end of the day, we have to make money, and all those check boxes continue to move forward.
Okay, yeah, that you actually mentioned the SciTech Aurora, and that was something we wanted to touch on. That we're bringing on board a partner and global harmonization. What was the route to that? Because that obviously is a small molecule LCMS person. I was in no way associated with it, but where did that come from? Because again, that becomes a very positive thing for the company.
Yeah, maybe I'll let John. John probably has the best history on why we decided to make that investment.
Well, again, kind of, just putting ourselves out there and saying, hey, are we providing the service and the offerings and the science and technology to help our clients develop the drugs? Where are they developing the drugs, right? And more, as all of you know, it's going more global in that perspective. So really with those things in mind, when we started thinking about moving up to the spectral flow, we knew that was going to attract a higher level of clients, everything from biotech to large pharma. And at the same time, in my opinion, you can't just walk out, particularly to someone, particularly in large pharma, and say, hey, we have one system and we'd love to do all your work now.
Oh, if that was that, it's not that easy, huh?
And so with those things in mind, I think there's a certain level of competence you have to have about what industry needs, so we don't send our commercial team into a suicide mission and, actually degrade the brand, because once you create that impression with a client, then that's where you're at. And so we wanted to make sure our team was enabled and ready to go, and that we had done our homework. And so we were arguably one of the first labs to be able to say that we've had spectral flow harmonized. And when we mean harmonized, we can put the data on your table to show how we went about that. And that created a little bit of stir in the industry, quite frankly. Several competitors have now stepped up and tried to match that. So yeah, it's again, for me, kind of going back to being in the labs and sometimes never having to be able to compete when you're a competitive person. I don't want our teams to feel that way. But again, when you have the tools of the trade, then you're expected to win the game.
So I remember it being a little like iterative, right? Like we thought about getting spectral flow in Philadelphia. We had to get 2 there, and then we needed 2 spectral flows in Lyon. And at that point, I thought, boy, we're asking for a lot. And then suddenly we kept getting asked about APAC. And that became kind of in order to really, if you're not familiar with like flow-based methods, oftentimes, well, really the challenge is you may need to do it stat or day of, right? And that requires that to be in the region where, for traditional PK and ADA stuff, you could just freeze it and send it to us. That wasn't really an option, although you can do PBMCs. But I just remember going back saying, how are we going to get flows at APAC? And sure enough, I thought it was really creative how we did a partnership. And as you kind of mentioned, it is definitely something that differentiates us. Even though some of our competitors are trying to do it, maybe they do, but I think we still have the most off-the-shelf panels and one of the first to really truly be harmonized. I don't know if it's a good segue to talk about China at all, or is that something in our future?
Well, I'll briefly say that, it's if as we continue to grow, I would still put us in that mid-market category. We are obviously a standalone bioanalytical services organization, but again, with the competitiveness and the great work that the teams have done, the clients always ask for more, right? They trust us more and more with the work they're doing, the products they're developing. We're seeing work, when we walk through, a mall or watch on the evening TV, hey, that's us. We help do that, right? It's not our name on it, but we know we've helped do that. And as the clients trust us more and more, they're going to ask for more and more. And that's one of the areas that we're looking into heavily, and have a massive business case prepared for that, and well on our way. In fact, we concluded our board meeting in New York last week, and I'm happy to say we will be expanding into China.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Look at that, breaking news for the
there you go.
audience.
Hot off the press, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that really brings us to our final
Yeah.
topic, and what we've been talking about the last 6 years, but where do you see the industry going in the future, and what does the future hold for us, just from your crystal ball, right?
Oh, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't throw out the 2 letters right there, AI. I think that's the thing where everybody's trying to figure it out. From my perspective, You hear everything from nobody will have a job, everybody's sitting around with the little drinks with the umbrellas in them, or nobody will have a job, and there'll be the haves and the have-nots. I tend not to buy the hype. The more hype I see, the more turned off I get. But with that in mind, asking companies about what they're doing, it seems like the acceleration, or where we're seeing that, ourselves included, is in areas of the greatest opportunity is, how do you take the data you're creating and do more with it quicker? If you think about, always go back to the end of the day, what is a business's objective, right? Well, first of all, it has to be make money, or you can't be in business. But second of all, how do you make the money? From my perspective, I think where this could accelerate things is that if we can find more molecules in the pipeline, how's a drug company make money? They have to develop that product and get it moving. So I firmly believe, it's not going to happen overnight, but I firmly believe that the market will only improve. There'll be more products, more viable products in the pipeline. And so I think what we'll see is improved, approval rates. I think there'll be less, poor molecules in the pipeline, and there'll be better molecules in the pipeline. So I think the industry as a whole, and is having this high risk, high reward type perspective, will be able to moderate some of that risk. So I'm really interested to see, because I think we all realize biotech companies really got their start by high science right up front, taking the risk because they didn't have enough pipeline backing it. So we got to push this through and see if it's going to make it. I'm wondering how that dynamic will change over the next 5 to 10 years. Sure. I think it's going to be more of a blending, more of a I don't think any of that's going to go away, but I do think it will be much more of the partnerships. We've seen so much acquisition and partnerships between large pharma and biotech. I think that will kind of congeal to a more accelerated level. We can produce millions of compounds, right? Think of what China has done here in the last 5 to 10 years. So the question is, how do you invest your money, and how far on the R&D do you take it and have confidence that it's going to be a product? So AI should be able to help us out with that.
And we've still seen untapped biologies as well. That's one of the things we touch on a regular basis. There's new pathways discovered, and then, okay, how do you then address that pathway? And so it's another door opening. So yeah, it's from our perspective, it's a fascinating field to be part of.
For sure. I think you said it well. It could expand, put more of it, drugs we never thought of, could open up a whole slew of areas we didn't think of, and it does hold a lot of promise. I don't think there's too much to be fearful of. Any other thought? I think AI is a really important piece of our future, obviously, or the future of science in general. Any thoughts on, I obviously always have thoughts on where I think the field is going, but especially like the conjugated space, right? That's a big one. I know Amy had talked earlier about the ELISA. I think that's a really, if you're not familiar with that platform, it can do like 250 biomarkers in a 20 microliter sample, and you get results from a plasma sample for like 99 or 95% of the analytes you measure. That type of data goes hand in hand with AI, right? Because you're generating all this data. What's it mean? Yeah, and that becomes a big piece of things. And certainly, those types of biomarkers can really help you understand what's working and what's not. And that's still a little bit of a mystery, especially in the neurodegenerative space. I think that's a market that the new ELISA holds a lot of promise for, as well as inflammation. But sorry, I kind of asked you a question, then talked. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Yeah, no. But do you see any industry trends that you think you want to mention here? Or?
Yeah, I think the AI piece was a good one on I think time is going to continue to be the enemy. So accelerating and getting things done as efficient as we can, with good science still, holding the lead there. I think that's always going to be part of what this industry needs, and part of what we are challenged to keep up with it and find ways to make sure we're getting things done as efficiently as we can.
Yeah, I know there's for me, I'll just kind of chime in. There's changes in the immunogenicity dynamics as well. There is the lean ADA assay kind of approach for preclinical. There's all sorts of consortiums on, if you're not familiar with immunogenicity, you need 3 tiers as part of your clinical trials, the screening, confirming, and titering. There's lots of movement in the industry to kind of reduce that into a single screening, avoiding all, the intricacies of establishing cut points. and just using signal to noise. It was really a buzz at WRIB. You can really sense that there's justification for it. Although I don't know if it's just because I work at KCAS Bio or have a somewhat of a conservative approach towards that. I do think it's something that should probably, maybe you can reduce it as you go into clinical trials, but I don't know if it's right to just come out of the gate. You got to justify it first. So that's some of the areas. I don't know if you had thoughts, John.
No, I mean, I think for my spec, it tends to be more on the platform side of things. I'm not sure what's coming through to supersede things like the Orbitrap right now. It's to watch.
And that's the oligo space is a huge growth area. And then I think in vivo CAR T cells is going to be the real future. I kind of touched on that in one of the articles we read, although I think traditional autologous CAR T cells aren't going to just go away, but because there's, as John mentioned, there's like 200 clinical trials, but we're very fortunate to be ahead of the curve in the the in vivo CAR T cell space, because we support a couple of them today. And so it's great technology, really anything that can help make things more affordable and help save lives. That's right what we get up for every day to do. Being ahead of the curve, not only in technology and science, we were ahead of the curve in doing a podcast. We were basically the first one to do a podcast, and it's been a thrill. It's been a wonderful ride. We are coming to the conclusion of our main portion here. So I'm going to give you guys a hot seat question if you're ready. I'll give you an easy one. What's your favorite weekly bioanalysis podcast episode?
Well, there's so many to choose from, and I always look forward to seeing those and seeing what you guys have come up with next. But the one, it's going to be easy to say, maybe this is a cop-out, but the first one I was in, nobody warned me about the hot seat questions. So I started getting these questions, and felt, just that hesitation and comfortable. I think, what did you think when you first joined KCAS Bio, and how did you feel about the science and technology and all those aspects? And I'm like, wow, these guys they're taking this very seriously and putting me on the spot. So it was definitely felt a little bit of a hot seat there.
Well, we've become softer. It's now what's your favorite drinks and what's your favorite meals. We've toned it down a little since the early days.
Man, these guys ought to be sitting across from a jury and asking questions of lawyers. But no, it's great. It's great to see it evolve. And there's not one, to me, that they all stand out. The topics, sometimes can be from, my seat on the bus, maybe a little more interesting one way than the other, but obviously knowing what we're doing here at KCAS Bio, it's great to see the evolution and just the complexity that it's involved to now. Not so much complexity. You guys make it look simple and easy, and I know it's not. You guys do a lot of work on this, and really appreciate what you gentlemen do.
It can be stressful at times, but it's a lot of fun doing it.
You always look forward to the hot seat questions. That's what you learn more about people. That's why it's a good thing to throw in.
I actually want to thank you both for allowing us to do this. It's been an honor.
Yes, it has been.
Yeah.
All right, you're up.
I don't get off the hot seat. No. Yeah, I think with 100 episodes, it's impossible to choose the favorite. I think my favorite thing about the podcast is the many times I've had the opportunity to be at a national conference, and clients and people walk by, and just hearing how impressed, and they love this podcast, and they tell me their favorite things about it, and they always enjoy the news section, the banter between the two of you, and they've just really enjoyed. You both have become personalities that most of our followers enjoy following. They feel like they know you, and maybe a lot of them do, and some of them don't know you as well as we do, but I've enjoyed that. And just the number of guests that we've been able to attract over time on different topics that have been eager to come and be part of the episode, and all of our own team that has joined the table at one time or another. So I think there's a lot of great memories, a lot to look back on, and I'm really proud of where we've come, and thank you for what you've done.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. Honored, like I said, honored to do it. And even as I sit here, I think about those first few podcasts when we were like really struggling with audio, and just thinking like, how is this ever going to who would listen to this? And, was that WRIB? And you're right, it is a little bit, I don't know if, I guess this might shock, I'm a little shy. Like, it's almost embarrassing to have someone, but there are people who will come up and be like, there is like a subtle, like, little subcult of a following of us at these places, and even have had people want to take pictures, and, even on prospecting calls, someone will be like, oh, it really is it's just, it's flattering and humbled to be part of it, and looking forward to, I don't know about another 100 episodes, but certainly many more.
I think we were lucky with Jeremy's help, actually, that we did that news section right from the beginning. And that was the way it basically helped us get our heads straight before the main discussion, because obviously we're not winging it during the news section. We were in the early days, and it was awful. But once we realized this is a structure that makes sense, it became much easier to prepare for, and as a result, much more fun to do. And it has been great having the guests on and stuff. That actually takes the pressure off, because as soon as you got a guest, you get them on a subject they're passionate about, they'll talk forever, and it's like, well, this is great. I don't have to do any work here. I just have to throw in the odd word here and there, and we're good. But it has been a lot of fun. It's been great to have people on to join us.
No, I think NBC might be calling for,
Well,
late show host in the future here, maybe.
talking about maybe doing something at Farm 360 maybe this year as well. Yeah,
There you go.
fun. But okay, you guys are off the hot seat, and thank you both for
Thank you very
joining
much
us.
for Joe's special.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, John, now we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to put each other in the hot seat maybe for a little bit here, huh? How's that sound? I'm going to go first because, well, I'm talking first.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, why don't you tell us what your favorite podcast was over the last 100?
Well, I'm not allowed to say any other than the one my wife appeared on. So we did one on GLP-1s, and it was really nice to have her participate, but it was just a really fun one to record.
And that one got a lot of traction, I
Yeah.
think. That was one that people still remember. It was such a hot topic, and it was a thrill to have her on.
It was nice to have someone civilized on the podcast. That was the key piece of it,
She did bring a sense of intelligence and coordination when she was on. No.
How about you? Which one would you?
So, as I kind of thought about this, I do enjoy most of them, or almost all of them. What's near and dear to me is always talking about ligand binding assays versus hybrid mass spec. So I guess I'm going to give a shout out to Dawn Dewfield. When she was on, we always have nice banter there. And that's, if you've never seen some of that, you can go find on our website many hours of us talking and debating about whether you should do hybrid versus mass spec. And that's one that really sticks out because it's one that's still kind of ongoing that.
So to counter that, what's your least favorite memory about doing the podcast?
Oh, I think it's on a consistent basis. If you don't know, I struggle with the microphone. So we have these microphones and computers, and for whatever reason,
I hate you.
I don't know what it is. Like for a little stretch, I seem to be okay, but I still always I feel like I don't know. I think it's a shout out for me to get a new computer from the IT department here. That's how I'm going to remedy it. And then maybe I'll hit up our producer Jeremy for a newer microphone now that it's 6 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna upgrade my technology. And thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna throw it right back at you. Is there a
So
least
I
favorite?
the early ones were just horrendous because I'd never felt prepared, and it was like, well, we got to say something, what we're going to talk about, and until we started introducing structure to it, but so a proper agenda, etc., then I could relax and do it. But those particularly as we were doing them weekly.
Yeah.
It really was. It was. Thursday, Friday's usually the good bit of the week because that's when you're thinking we're getting to the weekend, we'll go out for some nice drinks, we'll have some good time. But Thursday, Friday, we're doing this damn weekly podcast.
Yeah.
It's like,
No, it's
my life sucks. I want to die.
I kind of forgot about that. Yeah.
But opening it up to a much more occasional thing and having an agenda just made life much better.
Well, it's so funny. Even though we felt like they were maybe lower quality and not our best, people really liked them. Because we were because if you remember, we were talking about COVID and some of the latest and greatest, and it was certainly internally, there were a lot of people internally who looked forward to it. So putting aside maybe what we thought, because when I listened to it, I was like, oh my God, I sound terrible. I don't know what's going on. But like it actually, I think, gave a little boost for me to hear so many of our colleagues say, hey, my wife and I like listening to this. It settles us down a little bit to hear you talking about it. It was really, and of course it's evolved into, as you said, a better structure.
Yeah, I mean, I did enjoy using it as an opportunity to filter out. There was a lot of nonsense out there to really
misinformation.
filter out what was the true information, and then be able, because we'd spent some time to it, be able to share it with other
Just
people.
giving our thoughts on
So
it.
that was worthwhile.
Yeah.
I agree.
I even had some neighbors who liked to listen to it because it just gave some people a sense of like, we're all going to be okay.
Yep.
Yep. All right, maybe what we got going on this week? You got anything going on this weekend?
This weekend, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you do.
I am basically once I finish here, I fly home tomorrow. I then pack Wednesday. Thursday, I'll be flying out again. I'm actually going down to Chile to see. So the Chameleons, who I've listened to and watched for years, and did a American tour, and none of the dates worked at all. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to see them this tour. That's fine. And then they announced a Latin American tour. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And so I had a look at what their Saturday dates were. They did Mexico City this last weekend. And then they're doing Santiago next weekend.
Unreal.
So I asked, my wife's name's Catherine, by the way, and her podcast episode was number 92, if I remember correctly. We can check later. And so anyway, she couldn't do Santiago, wasn't sure about Mexico City, and I said, and then I'm going. I got air miles and I'm going.
Wow.
And so it's a long weekend in Santiago. And I've never been to South America before, but my dad actually my mum used to go to South America quite often because he had like a guest lectureship at Conception University, go there for like a month at a time. Conception's, I think, south of Santiago.
Okay.
So they loved Chile. They did like Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, all over the continent. So this is my first chance to get there. And
Well,
if
it's
it
quite a
looks good,
trip.
we're gonna be having another
You
trip
are a
somewhere.
Chameleons groupie for
Yeah, there
sure
you
with
go.
that type
Yeah,
on it.
yeah.
That's a notch on the belt. That's a whole nother level of fandom
Yeah,
that I'm
so
sure
that's
they appreciate.
That's my weekend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, even though I have somewhat of an exciting weekend, my son is he's going to Japan on Saturday for 3 weeks, and that's got us a little, I don't know if nervous is the right word, but we got to take care of that. And then I will be on vacation next week. I'm going to Charleston, South Carolina
Nice.
for the week.
Yes.
My wife and I got a nice Airbnb downtown. It's one of those, we plan on there'll be no cars. All we're going to do is she really loves the show Southern Charm, and some of the Real Housewives highlight Charleston. So we're like right in a nice area, tons of shopping. There's some beaches around. So we might make it to the beach a little bit, just a 4-day, 5-night getaway or something like that. 5 days, 4 nights, but really excited to take the week off. There'll be no computer or nothing like
There you
that
go.
for me. So
That's the way to play it.
see, even when I do have a fun story to tell, John's got to one-up me with going to Peru because that sounds a little bit more adventurous.
Peru,
yeah.
Chile.
Oh, sorry,
Peru may be
Chile.
another
Sorry,
thing.
Chile.
Yes.
Chile. Sorry, I
Yes.
mentioned the wrong South American country. Well, that about wraps it up for us. It's been really exciting to do a 100th episode live here in video. Very thrilled to have John and Amy join us. It was an exciting episode, and I don't know if you have any last thoughts, John.
No, it's a blast to do it. But I'm looking forward to this weekend, Nora, I have
Yeah.
to say.
And we really like to thank everybody who listens to the podcast, joined us on the podcast. Those of you that had taken a minute to come and say hello at conferences and so forth. We just want to thank the audience for listening. And it's been a pleasure to do 100 podcasts. And we'll see you in the funny pages.
And and actually, all our guests, we really want to thank everyone who appeared to actually share their knowledge and just them joining us made a really fun thing to do. And yeah, we've had a great 100 episodes. Thanks. Looking forward to number 101.